Hello and welcome back to Talking Teens Official. I'm Nural and I'm so glad you could join me today, and I really appreciate your support and your listening ears. Today we're going to be talking about money, but before we get started, just a quick disclaimer. I'm not a financial advisor. This episode is all about opening up conversations and sharing educational insights from my perspective as a teacher and a parent. The goal here is to help you guide your kids and your teenager, not to give specific financial advice. So please do your own research and encourage your kid to do your own research. And you might be wondering, why am I talking about money? Why am I doing an episode about money? Well, I just wanted to give you a bit of a preview into their world at the moment and what they are thinking about money. It is something that we are all interested in, and it is something that all kids know about, but they don't know how to get it and they don't know what to do when they do get it. And also keep in the back of your minds that next time you see on social media, how come we never learnt about taxes at school or super? I'll tell you, we do teach it and it's in the Year 9 curriculum. It's probably a bit early from my personal opinion, but it is taught. So please, next time you see those posts, shut them down because we do teach it. All right, so let's get started. We're diving into money. First of all, I want to paint a picture in your mind. Just imagine your kid, your teenager walks into the room, their phone is in their hands, and their eyes are wide with that specific kind of excitement. They show you a pair of shoes, a pair of sneakers. They're not just any sneakers. They're the ones that everyone has, and they cost around $250. And they don't just want them. They tell you they need them. What's the first thing that comes out of your mouth? For most of us, it's a bit of a knee-jerk reaction. It's a hard no. We immediately go to the classic lines we probably heard from our own parents, like, "No way, Jose. Do you think money grows on trees?" Or the classic fallback, "When you start working, you can save up and buy them yourself." And just like that, the conversation is over. A wall goes up. It becomes a battle of wills, of frustration and disappointment. We've turned a potential teaching moment into a conflict. But what if we took a different approach? What if, instead of shutting it down, we opened it up? Instead of that hard no, what if the first words out of your mouth were, "Yeah, they're nice. I get why you want them." You're not agreeing to buy them. You're just validating their desire. You're connecting. And then you ask the simple, curious question that changes everything. But do you need them? And why? That question and the conflict over a pair of sneakers isn't really about the shoes at all. It's a symptom of a much bigger generational gap in how we think, talk, and learn about money. This brings to mind the work of the late, great Sir Ken Robinson. He famously argued that our school systems were designed like factories for an industrial age that no longer exists, and that we're still struggling to shake off that one-size-fits-all model. I believe the same thing is true even for financial advice for our kids. Many of us are parenting from an industrial age financial playbook, while our kids are stepping into the creator age. They need a financial education that values adaptability, entrepreneurship, and diverse income streams, not just the linear path we were taught. The old money rules, the old school money rules, they still apply and they still have value, of course. But the foundational principles we grow up with, such as study hard, work for what you want, save and don't spend, they're still important. But they were all in service of a dream that is changing. For our parents, a key reason for those rules was the big goal. It was to get a house. It was home ownership. But we need to face the modern reality. That goal now feels impossible for many of our kids. Let's just look at the numbers. Right now, the median house price in many Australian cities is hovering around $1 million. And I can already hear people saying, "Yeah, but it's all relative to wages." And they're right, it is. But when our parents' generation bought their homes, the price might have been around 4 or 5 times their annual salary. A huge stretch, but achievable. Today, that $1 million house is about 10 times the average annual wage. The goalposts haven't just shifted. They've been moved to a completely different field over in the far corner. So when a teenager looks at that maths, what does it do to their mindset? It fundamentally changes their financial priorities. And I'm going to tell you about a conversation I had about 10 years ago with a colleague of mine who was a millennial. She was doing all the things the older generation would frown upon. She was buying coffee every day. She was going out for lunch, coming back, getting a smashed avo for lunch to eat at work. And she was renting with no plans at all whatsoever to buy. She was shopping online. She always had nice clothes, nice shoes. And when I asked her why she had no plans to buy, she said something that has stuck with me ever since. She told me, I'll never be able to afford a home around here, especially if I stop work to have a family. So I might as well enjoy my money while I can. And there it is. That's the shift. It's not about being frivolous. It's a pivot from a long-term delayed gratification for that goal that feels unreachable of buying a house to focusing on short-term, tangible quality of life. That's the millennial mindset. So if the old dream feels broken, what's replacing it? For many teens, it's a pivot towards a more fluid digital economy. This is happening in two main areas, and I think you need to be aware of these ones. First of all, you have the creator economy. You've heard about the influencers on YouTube, and it's really easy to dismiss, especially from the older generation. But the reality is, for those who aren't afraid to show up online, there is some serious money to be made. In Australia, it's less about getting paid by the platforms and more about building a business. It's about learning to scroll, not as a consumer, but as a creator, and then selling something of value to your audience, like a digital product or coaching. So our teenagers are now thinking they can make money online in a side hustle on top of working their job. So how can you as a parent help your kid, your teenager, shift from being a passive consumer on social media to an active creator? It starts with a simple conversation. And you need to encourage them to build a profile, train the algorithm, I spoke about that a few episodes ago, to build a profile on their genuine interests and their strengths. I've done this with my own son. He's growing a TikTok account dedicated to scents and fragrances and aftershaves, and it's called Epistemic Scents. He started it based on a piece of advice I gave him. Find something you know a lot about, create valuable content that people want to consume, and work towards becoming a trusted authority in that niche. A little bit like what I'm doing here with Talking Teens Official. Then you have the second path. You have the digital assets. This is for the kids who are more private. They're the ones buying digital currencies like Bitcoin. But here's the key. The difference is they view these currencies as an asset in the same way the boomer generation bought Telstra and BHP shares. It's their generation's version of a blue chip stock. So what's our role in all of this? The biggest teachable moment for any parent is when their teenager gets their first job and their first paycheck. They want to spend what they earn straight away. And the temptation is to lecture them about saving. But I suggest a different approach. I call it the let it rain and then let the well dry up method. You need to celebrate that first paycheck. You need to celebrate that first job. It's exciting. It gives them a freedom to spend it however they want. Let them feel the joy and the power of owning their own money, and then let them feel the pain when the well runs dry and they can't afford something else they want. That feeling is a far better teacher than any lecture you can give. And when they're feeling that pain, that's your moment. You don't come in with, "I told you so." You come in with a curious question. You say something like, "That feeling sucks, doesn't it? You worked all those hours for that money. Imagine if you had put a little bit aside for when you really needed it." You start with that simple cash stash idea, the old, put money under the mattress. But then you introduce the real magic, and this is what a lot of kids need to get their head around. What I really want you to know is that you can put just a small amount away each month and completely forget about it. Then one day when you remember it or really need it, you'll find that it has grown all on its own. The best investment you'll make is the one you forget about. So how does a teenager actually do this? The great news is that it's easier than ever before because of the digital world we are in. There are platforms known as micro-investing apps designed for beginners, and time is on their side. But instead of naming products, I'm not going to name any products for you because that's not why I'm here. The best place for you and your teen to start your research and just flicking that mindset into a bit of a money mindset, have a look at the government's Money Smart website. It has fantastic, impartial guides on all money-related topics in an age-appropriate way, so depending on what stage of life you're at, check it out. Your role is not to be a financial advisor as a parent, but it's to be kind of a risk coach. This is what they need to understand. They need to understand, and you need to talk to them about what risk means and financial risk means. And please give them a firm warning about the digital dangers. There are a lot of scams out there, and the old rule has never been more true. If an offer sounds too good to be true, it probably is. So drill that one into them as well. And finally, once they start earning and investing, you can introduce one last idea. The fourth pillar of financial health, which is giving. Encourage them to put a tiny fraction towards a cause they believe in. It's not about charity. It's that research consistently shows that altruism and giving back are directly linked to our own personal happiness. It's the perfect way to teach them that money isn't just a tool for personal gain, but a tool to create a meaningful life. The specific tool doesn't matter as much as the principle when it comes to financial advice and money with your kids. The main message is if they start early and they be consistent and let time do the heavy lifting, it should pay off in the end. So the goal here isn't to have all the answers for our kids. We can't predict the future of cryptocurrency or know what the next big YouTuber will be. But that's not our job. Our job is to shift them from the old rigid playbook to being an open-minded guide. It's about starting the conversation and helping them understand the difference between a want and a need, and teaching them the foundational principle that their money can and should work for them. It all starts, as always, with connection. Next time on Talking Teens, we're tackling one of the most underrated and powerful life skills. We're tackling the art of the apology. We've all heard a forced sorry from our kids before, but what does a genuine apology look like? And why is teaching it a superpower that can mend friendships, build trust, and shape your teen's character for life? Join me next week as we explore how to teach a lesson that truly matters. If you enjoyed this episode, by the way, and you want to continue the conversation, please follow and subscribe on all our social media channels, Talking Teens Official. And if you find real value in what we're doing here, please consider buying me a coffee. I'll put a QR code in the comments and show notes. You can donate any amount you want, and every little bit helps fuel my late night coffee supply while I'm editing these episodes for you. Thanks for listening, and until then, remember that focus, connection, overcorrection. This is Nural, and you've been listening to Talking Teens.